the Iron and Infrastructure Podcast. We have a guest in the house, Mr. Adam Lewin. Adam is the CEO and owner of Hamilton Parker. He is a part of multiple nonprofits. And one of the most inspiring things about Adam is the longevity of the business that he is the owner of. 2024 will be 90 years in business. So, Adam, thank you for coming on today. We'll get to how we met in a little bit, but first I want you to tell me a little bit about your business and the longevity of it.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Well, the company that I own is called Hamilton Parker. It's based in Columbus, Ohio, and like you said, we'll be 90 years in business here in 2024. But what's really important to me is that we understand the history of the company and how we started. So basically in 1934, my grandparents, Alvin and Gertrude, purchased Hamilton Parker Fuel and Supply for $500 at an auction. They didn't change the name. They wanted to keep the name of the company the same because they bought it during the Great Depression, and they wanted to make sure that they kept the customers. So, they were a really interesting duo. My grandmother was the books and the business smarts, and my grandfather was the salesman. So think about in 1934, you have a woman essentially running a business. It just wasn't that common. So they basically took this business out of bankruptcy, grew it, and then over the years my father came into the business out of high school and then diversified it. Coal was going away, other building products were coming into place, and my father really built the business on a horizontal growth path of I'm going to sell brick and masonry, I'm going to sell tile, I'm going to sell garage doors, I'm going to sell fireplaces, and he really evolved the business. I grew up around the business. I stacked brick, I picked up trash, I swept warehouses, just I had a major appreciation for just the guys that get up and, for lack of a better term, do the dirty work every day because they're so important to the fundamental success of a company. But it taught me how to work. It taught me how to appreciate a great day of work. And as a kid, I remember going home and like washing off and just dirt coming off my body. For me, because I was a fortunate kid. I mean, I had very loving parents, a very supportive environment. I really loved just working hard. I loved the overtime line item on my paycheck, and I remember that as a young kid. And then so I was in the business. I grew up around it. I went to college, came back and said I want to live in Columbus, and then I worked with my dad for 12 years before he passed away, and bought the business December 31st, 2005. And, really just have expanded the business into Cincinnati and Cleveland. And we now have 135 employees and hitting 90 years.
That's incredible.
And a lot of it really is just evolving the culture of the company. I mean, I meet every quarter with all the new employees that join the company. And the reason why I do that is because I remember when the company was much smaller, because that's when I was a little kid, and I wanted to make sure that we carried that on. So I go over the history of the company, I learn about new employees, talk about the important role that they have within the company, and I do that every quarter with all the new employees.
That is incredible. I want to go back to something you mentioned, 1934, the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Such a scarcity mindset for 99.9% of Americans at that point, where we have an abundance mindset today because food is at every street corner. Even, the homeless live a fairly decent life because they don't have to worry about food as much because it's readily available, right? 1934, you buy a business out of the most economic, quite literally the worst depression state of the United States today, and you buy a business and 90 years later still thriving. And you mentioned something even more powerful. In 1934, women were not considered, I don't want to say equals, I don't know how to say this correctly, I guess, but equals, and especially looked at as far as a business sense. For that dynamic to grow and be sustainable and then, evolve over time, that has to mean a lot to you from a foundational, heritage standpoint, because that is astronomical odds on every level.
Oh yeah, I mean so I have two sisters and my mother. I mean Hamilton Parker was a part of our life, right? So you can take the word Hamilton Parker and put any business in the sentence, and depending on the family, it becomes a part of the family. And I can remember, and I know my sisters remember this as well, is that my father always talked about the sacrifice that his parents made so that he could have a better life. And so, of course, I wasn't around in 1934, but I knew about the sacrifice. And that is what resonated with me about what my grandparents did and why my dad appreciated his parents and what he taught us so that, we could carry it on. And, my sisters, they're not involved in the business, but they're supporters. But the reality is that my father said, look, you're in the business every day. You can buy it if you want and work for yourself. And at that time I said, yes, I want to do that. And, we've maintained incredible family synergies, and we get along, and we're close, and we're supporters, and it's because of just how we were raised, and understanding that nothing happens easily. You have to be willing to sacrifice, but you've got to be able to support each other too.
Absolutely. What does culture mean to you? What does culture mean to Adam Lewin?
I mean, for me, it's a mindset, and it's something that has to be an everyday conversation within an organization. And so what we did is we created core values around, I think, about 10 years ago. And we did it because we were growing, and the number of employees was expanding. And so how do you talk about the history of the company? How do you talk about what is important to us when you're not really seeing each other every day because we are growing or we have different locations? So we created these core values that we felt reflected not only me as an owner, but also the company that we had become. And so the core values at my company is based on the word heart, and it's H for history, E for enthusiastic, A for adaptable, R for reputable, and T for team-oriented. And what we basically say is if you join Hamilton Parker, it's because you understand these core values and you reflect them. And if you stay at Hamilton Parker, you're always going to be expected to do that.
So you hire, you fire, you make decisions based on them. We have the same thing. We just implemented our core values last year or the beginning of this year. And for me personally, I represent myself and I live by these core values on a personal level, also professional level. Is that similar to your core values? Do you look at them as just a way that you live your life as much as anything else?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say this, that I am not, for me, again, I have a wonderful family. My wife, my 3 kids, like, they know about Hamilton Parker. They know it's where I go every day, what I do to provide. But I will tell you that we have kind of our core values at home that we talk about, and they're similar to the core values that we have at work. But I try not to bring too much of work into the home because for me, it's my own escape from the business. And also, my wife's the boss of the family, not me.
Understand that.
Maybe my 7-year-old too.
Yeah. Well, yes, I understand. My 6-year-old daughter is absolutely certain to take over the household already. Yeah. So she's got that. She got that on us for sure. So you said you bought Hamilton Parker in 2005. A few years later, we all know what happened in 2008. So talk about that. Talk about adversity and what challenges you faced at that point in time and how difficult it was. And then what did that present to you afterwards as far as outlook on life and how you approach adversity in situations now?
Yeah, I mean, think about the fact that, when I came into the business in 1995 after graduating from college, I mean, Central Ohio, which was our only office at the time, I mean, it was just growing. And just for perspective, the number of single-family houses being built was big. There was 12,500 single-family houses being built in Central Ohio in 2005. So I buy the business. My father was sick with cancer. He knew that he was, not going to be around for a long time, but it was all about the transition and longevity of the business. And so I bought the business and, used bank financing to do it. And then within 2 years, the single family permits in Central Ohio went from 12,500 down to 2,500. So, if nothing else, there was 10,000 less units that we could sell products on for houses. And people were unemployed. Office space was becoming, empty, so new office space wasn't being built. I mean, it was a mess. It was catastrophic. And I was really fortunate to have people that I could talk to that were, my dad's age. They were mentors of mine. I had an advisory board that I used to just be able to get me in the room and talk about what I needed to understand, I needed to do. And I remember, the two things I remember from the recession, our revenue went down 42% within 2 years of me buying the business. And we really didn't focus on laying off people. We really focused on the concept for employees of, look, 32 hours with medical benefits is better than no job with no benefits. So everybody stepped in. Our salaried people worked the showroom as we needed to. Our drivers and yard guys ended up doing the snow removal during the winter. Anything to give them hours and to save money. Cleaning the building, we got rid of our cleaning company. We brought it in. Like anything we could do to just give hours was the things that we did. And so it was just all hands on deck to do whatever we could do. But I will say that during the recession and during like our advisory board meetings, the two things I remember from that was one about sometimes you have to redefine winning. So, it was such a scary time. We knew we were not going to make money. We knew we were not going to make money as a company. And it was said to me look, you have to just redefine winning. To sit here and talk about profitability when profitability is unlikely, you can't set that as a goal. But maybe you say, look, if you're going to lose $1 million, you just redefine winning and say, just try and lose $500,000, because that's better than what you thought based on all the metrics and conversations that you have. So sometimes, look, winning and losing, you measure it, it happens. It's how we're, graded many times in life. Certainly, we just talked about the Columbus Crew, and it's like wins and losses, that's what matters, right? But sometimes you have to have context to what is going on around you. And so sometimes you have to redefine winning to be able to say, look, we made it through it. But the other part was that I kind of learned what I am, which is a happy warrior. I'm an intense person. I like to win. I like to watch others win. I'd like to watch others feel good. But, I'm a pretty happy guy. I'm an optimist, and I remember even during the recession, it was so stressful. It was so sad. It was so scary. I had to be a happy warrior because I had to let people know, I'm in it with you, but we're going to be as positive as possible at the same time.
Positivity, I think, is a key driver and a key. I'm glad you mentioned positive at the end of that. I am the same myself. I look at my life with persistent patience. That's how I describe myself.
Yeah.
Very persistent in my pursuit. And a lot of time I became patient with the result because forcing timelines to me has never worked out well.
Yeah.
When I try to force the timeline and I end up making mistakes, or it doesn't happen the way that it should have if the timeline would have been allowed to go naturally. So positivity to me, I look at myself as an optimistic person, but it's not blind optimistic. It's positivity. That's how I really kind of rechanneled it, because no matter what the outcome is going to be, it's going to be a lot better if your mindset's positive. And I have never had a good outcome happen when I was negative going into it. But anytime I'm positive, and I'm always looking at positivity with the driving force of motivation, the outcome's going to be positive because my mindset's positive. And it's like a cancer. It spreads if you allow it to, whether positive or negative, right? So positivity, if you're positive as the leader of the company, you have the most at stake because Hamilton Parker goes under, it's Adam Lewin's fault. It's on Adam Lewin no matter what. Everyone else can go find another job. You can't just pack up and go find another job. It's not that simple. As business owners, we are not able just to go do something different.
Yeah.
A lot of times. It's much more involved. So keeping that mindset positive and fighting for what you believe in is huge for the outcome of.
Yeah, I mean, I remember during the recession, again, people knew our industry was hurting, the residential construction, commercial construction. And people would say to me, are you keeping the lights on? And I'm like, I hate that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do not say that phrase to me. The lights are still on or whatever. I mean, I just couldn't stand it because it just is such a scary tone and an idea that when the lights go out, like it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wasn't. I just didn't want to hear that.
Right.
And as leaders, we set the tone. We have to, set the tone of not only how fast we go as a business, what kind of goals we want to achieve, but how we treat people in the process, how we work together. We are the tone setters.
100%. And I know for my personal experience during the negotiation to purchase our pipeline, it got leaked that me and my business partner Cody were trying to buy the company. So we had about 65, 70 people at that time. Everyone found out, not from us, and then confronted us with it. So here we are running the company, trying to buy the company, trying to get it ready to buy in the first place, and then trying to purchase it and keep everyone intact and not have everyone bail. And then this rumor mill starts and everyone finds out. And at that point we couldn't lie, right? So we just tell everyone, hey, we're trying to buy the company. That is it. We have an opportunity that we're trying to buy it. There's negotiations, nothing is final. And it scared the hell out of everyone because who are these two 30-year-olds that think they're, first of all, capable to buy the company, but then capable of owning it? And in all reality, we probably weren't, right? But we were determined because of our mindset, because of who we were, that we would make it happen and make it thrive. But the team around us was nervous, rightfully so. The ones that stayed loyal throughout that transition have thrived since we bought the company because not only were they loyal, but they seen the bigger picture and they believed in our mindset and our vision. And now they're thriving because of it, because not only did they stay loyal, but they believed in us and listened to what we had to say during the hard times.
Yeah.
So now as we move forward, 4 years in business, it's gotten a lot better for them and that return has been there for them. So talk about the power of your team and the power of your network. I tell a lot of people, show me your network and I'll show you your net worth. Mm-hmm. The people that you put around you, the people that you seek out to for advice, for, overcoming adversity or opportunities. Talk about the power of your network and how much that's helped you out.
Well, at some point you just have to decide how you want to, I guess, be willing to just learn from others. I don't know another way to put it. Mm-hmm. And I've always been, I'll never say that I wasn't fortunate or I didn't have opportunities, but I never really stopped on those opportunities. So like when I was a 11-year-old kid working in the brickyard, if a friend of my dad's or a business, contact came in, like he would call me into the yard and I would just sit in the office, and I was a young kid and I just listened and I was around, adult conversations, and candidly my kids are the same way. I mean, I get a lot of compliments on my kids that, I saw your daughter and, she's so nice to talk to and she looks me in the eye, and my kids like screens just like anybody, but they can have a conversation with someone, and we talk about that. Like, it's just so important to be able to have a good conversation because you want to be able to always have that relationship. And so, I have had mentors that, and through my network, for lack of a better term, that have just been incredibly important to me. Bob Schottenstein from MI Homes is a huge mentor of mine and friend, and Our fathers were very close, but we talk about what's going on. But I learned from him. Dave Lauer was was an accountant to my dad. Um, he taught me the importance of finances and the balance sheet on a business. Norman Traeger is someone who taught me about personal and mental well-being as a leader, and the concept of just growth, in an individual, that you're not just ready for it, like you have to grow into it. Um, so I've just been extremely fortunate. But now look, I'm 51 years old. I'm around a lot of people that have been through it, and I love that I can just call anyone and say, "Hey, can I just pick your brain on something?" And I love when people, do that. With me. I mean, certainly that's how we started. But it's like, if you are able to have a credibility within yourself and then within the community, people will trust you, and they will trust you to look out for them, or to trust in them to ask them for advice. And I mean, at the end of the day, when I can pick up the phone and call someone and just ask them for advice, it means the world to me. And I know that I love when people do the same.
So I'll second that all day. That 6 years ago we met because of an unfortunate circumstance when Mason passed away. I'll never forget you being at that funeral. I met you there. Don't remember meeting you outside of a handshake and acknowledgement of who you were. So a few months later, I get an invite to a Big Brothers Big Sisters annual luncheon because R&R Pipeline had donated time and material to a camp in southern Ohio, and we upgraded the utilities for a kitchen because they didn't have enough gas to feed their stoves and stuff. So we do this, and then we get this opportunity to go to this annual luncheon in hopes of meeting a VP of one of the companies that we work for. So this was my aha networking opportunity. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to make a name for ourselves. And boy, was I disappointed at first whenever we get there and that person never showed up. So I'm sitting at the table. I'm like, there has to be a reason why we got invited to this. There has to be a reason why. And as the Limited Brands president speaker gets done, you were next on stage to speak at this event. And I remember looking at my business partner, Cody, and I said, Cody, I am not leaving this place until I shake his hand. And I don't know what rhyme or reason I had in my mind that it was even going to be an opportunity, but I waited about 45 minutes. And I'm sure that we remember this moment very differently because I was, 6 years ago. I was 28 years old, the operations manager at the time of R&R Pipeline. But we had waited around. I waited till you're done talking to someone, and I was extremely persistent. I remember that. Introduced you, thanked you for everything you'd done for the family, and then wanted some of your time. And I respected time because I know how important it is. But I was very persistent in just getting a moment of your time. And what I presumed as test during that time was probably just you being yourself, a busy entrepreneur, extremely busy. And, you said, hey, get a hold of me here in a couple weeks. And I actually went back and looked at the email. So it was November 10th of 2017 is when I had actually emailed you originally. And then it went over, a couple months, and we met at Starbucks for 30 minutes.
Tim Hortons.
Yeah. Was it Tim Hortons?
Tim Hortons,
okay.
Yep.
So that 30 minutes, though, in Grandview that we met completely changed the way that I view the world. And it was such a simple gesture and a little bit of your time, but that little bit of your time changed my life. And I've never been able to thank you enough for it, even though I've thanked you multiple times. And then not long after that, you introduced me to Jim Havens. And it was this ripple effect of understanding how the world worked a little bit different because I was willing to stand around and wait for whatever reason. I still don't really know, but I knew at that time when you're up there speaking, I am talking to that guy. I don't give a damn if the security guards have to throw me out. They better be ready to fight because I am talking to Adam Lewin and I'm shaking his hand. And at first it was all because of wanting to thank you. But then as you're speaking, I knew a little bit about your history, just enough to know that I didn't know enough. So as you're speaking and finishing up, I'm researching you at that, sitting there, researching you, trying to find a talking point. And I really didn't have much of one outside of I'm an entrepreneur, or I'm trying to buy this company, and I don't even know where to start. And that was pretty much all I had. And then the introduction to Jim, 6 years later, we're sitting here doing this, right?
Yeah.
And my father-in-law works for you,
Mhm.
and he's spoke highly of you from day one. So back to culture, back to network, back to tying it all together. You have had people that you've always been able to reach out to that you've thought highly of, and you're one of the people for me. So there's 4 people that have absolutely changed the trajectory of my life as far as business goes, and you're one of them.
Thank you.
So I call it my Mount Rushmore of mentorship,
Thank you.
and you're one of the 4.
Well, I appreciate that.
Because you've always been there in the last 6 years for me. Whatever rhyme or reason for, don't know. But now that you've seen it on the other side, how does that make you feel understanding what the mentorship you had?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel now knowing that you can help impact other people's lives?
Well, okay, so we got to talk about that day for a second. So first of all, what's interesting is I did not remember that that R&R had done work at the camp for Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is called Camp Odioqua, and I didn't know that, right? Or I didn't remember it. And we had seen each other, prior, because of the Matt Mason's passing, and I mean, it's a busy day because I'm speaking at an event.
100%.
There's an award that we give out to organizations, and then I'm talking to a lot of people. I was a board member. I might have been board chair at that time. I don't remember, but I mean, the biggest thing I would say that you did that I encourage other people to do, it's like you got to raise your hand. Okay, you got to put yourself out there because nothing happens if you just wait, in the background.
100%.
And so, do I get calls from people or emails from people that say, "Hey, are you interested?" And honestly, yeah, I do. And a lot of them are garbage. They're AI generated. They're just, whatever. But nothing beats a personal interaction of basically raising your hand, going up to someone and saying, "Can I just have some time with you?" Right? I mean, just it that's what starts it, right? So you doing that is what created the opportunity for us to sit down and talk. And knowing myself, if you sent it like November 17th, it was probably like, okay, I'm finishing the end of the year. Let me get through this, and then we'll sit down and we'll meet. And we met at the Tim Hortons, and you just ask questions. I mean, at the end of the day, you trusted me, right? You trusted me. To say, look, I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to expose, what I don't know, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, yes, you work hard, you work out, you focus on your physical health, but think how strong it was to mentally go to someone and say, I don't know what I don't know, and I just need you to be honest with me, right?
Vulnerability is
I mean,
a superpower
it's
sometimes.
such a big deal, and I just don't know anyone that is vulnerable or that opens themselves up that doesn't grow, from that process. And I think that's kind of the crux of being a mentor and a mentee is being willing to take challenges because you have to be willing to share what you do or do not understand. So, for me, I just appreciate when people trust me to ask me a question about something that, whether I'm an expert or not, they trust me to ask an opinion of. And I have people that I've helped on the business side where it's just giving time. I'm not getting paid for it. It's not like some long engaged thing. It's just I'm giving you time. I'm giving you perspective. You've got to decide how you want to go about and do the work. And ultimately, it's their decision. I mean, I've given advice. I say, look, you have to decide what you want to do. I'm just telling you what I think. And, it's like if they try it and it doesn't work, I'm not here to beat them up. I'm just saying, okay, so what do you do now? How did you learn from it? And I always appreciate when people ask me for advice or perspective because I know what it meant to me when I got it, and I just enjoy helping others.
100%. And that's where I'm in that phase of my life now where I'm still very early in my journey and I still know that I don't know very much, and that's okay. I will learn till the day I die. That's just who I am. I am
Sure.
obsessed with developing me as a person and creating awareness for others, because I know that the more value that I can provide for other people, the more value that I will create for myself. And to me, I thought the purchase of R&R Pipeline was going to be that moment where I felt satisfied and
Yeah.
some gratification. And it took 12 years from 18 to 30 to buy this company. It was all in, sacrificing everything I had. And the day we purchased the company, I was like, man, I don't feel it yet, but I know it's coming
Yeah.
here in the next day or two. The next day, went out, kind of had a little bit of a celebration. And I woke up Sunday morning and I felt so empty that I felt gutted because I worked so hard for this one accomplishment. And then I felt more of a sense of urgency then,
Hmm.
because I'm not just responsible for me and my family. I'm responsible for the 65 other families that work for our pipeline, making sure that I make the right decision, because one wrong decision, we all don't have nowhere to go or nowhere, nothing to eat. So not only did I feel empty, and I couldn't figure out why. And in the last probably year or so, I started to figure it out, because it wasn't what I had accomplished, it was the person that I had become to accomplish that. So what I had put myself through personally and the person that I became was the actual satisfaction or the actual accomplishment. Arner Pipeline, the purchase of that was just my development happened, and I became a better human because of it. And because of what I had developed as far as a skill set, the side effect was the ability to buy the company. And now I realize that it's not what you achieve in life, it's who you become to achieve certain things. So we grow as individuals so much, and our accomplishments show our growth. If we just look at our accomplishments and don't look at our growth and try to help other people with what we've learned, it's really an unsatisfying, accomplishment. I didn't understand that until just recently. So for me, it's been coming full circle where I've been able to help a lot of other people in the last couple of years, almost on accident. Where you probably went through this yourself, where you didn't realize how much value you had to other people for a while, or at least I'm speaking for myself. I didn't understand my value until I seen some life changing results from people, for me just giving them a little bit of time, kind of like what you did for me. And now seeing it, it makes me passionate to create awareness. And that's what the Iron Infrastructure podcast is all about. It's creating awareness for a better way. It doesn't mean that anyone has to jump. I'm not saying you have to do this, you have to do that. No, I'm just letting you know there is a different way.
Yeah.
And individually, defining what success looks like to me, to you, to Treadway, it's different for all of us.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's not a one size fits all.
No.
Entrepreneurship is for us, right? But it's not for everybody. Success could be a school bus driver, a teacher, volunteering for the community. It can be anything, whatever gives you joy and happiness in life, whatever you want to do with your life, what gives you purpose. That is your individual success. And when people start to understand that, the world is a little bit different. And for me, I want to help create awareness for other people and create value for everyone else that I can, to help them go through the challenges and adversity that I had to go through. And it sounds like you have a very similar mindset or passion yourself, where you had adversity and things that you went through, and you had mentorship there to help you.
Sure.
You want to help expedite everyone else's journey.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, I agree. It's like there's a lot of different ways that people can have positive effects on someone, and yeah, a mentor conversation could be a formal sit down, formal being just a cup of coffee to just talk about it or things like that. But there's a lot of, I mean, just being good to someone else and being respectful of what they do and what they provide, whether it's for their family or for each other. It's just everyone. Look, I mean, everything about Big Brothers Big Sisters to me is about really just saying, like, people that want to help themselves, we want to help, right? But if you don't want to help yourself, I'm going to help you to a point, but I can't do it for you, right? So I've had that experience where people have just, I've told you what I think. You don't have to do it exactly, but if you don't even try it or try something, there's only so many times I can,
Right. 100%.
And so it's always fun to help people that are, just able to be willing to help themselves. But what I talk a lot about at work, it's not just about the authority, right? I mean, we have bosses, okay? There are people that are there to lead, and I want to talk about leadership as a studyable topic, but there's plenty of influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about authority, it's about influence. And, there are people that are just in charge, and you kind of have to do what they say, and hopefully if you don't agree there can be a good respectful conversation, or how do you get to the right answer. But there is a lot of people that they don't have authority but they have influence, and I love those people that
Absolutely.
like what they say. It just matters, and they give perspective that's important. And we all have different ways of how we can influence each other or what goes on. So authority, yes, but influence too. I mean, if you just have credibility that can give you the opportunity for influencing what goes on, there's a lot that can be learned from that.
That is very, very powerful. I cannot agree more. I could not have said it remotely that well because, authority is one thing, but leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. And perspective of the current situation a lot of time is, especially as business owners, as leaders of an organization, we get caught up in our own way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to do this personally where I'm very gas pedal. I'll create a sense of urgency based on chaos sometimes. And I actually created like a problem solving guide for myself where I sit back and I collect the facts of the situation before I open my mouth or before I send out the email, and I present the reality of it to myself before I do anything else. And personally and professionally, for me, that has paid dividends already
Yeah.
in the past few months because I've been able to take a non-emotional approach to something, taking a factual approach, and not led with my head or my heart, led with what is fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of inspiration from other people where they are able to do that, and they are able to maybe even share a personal story about setting back, collecting their thoughts, and then showcasing what the end result was because the initial thought was not put out on display.
Yeah.
Where the don't press send mantra,
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to collect your thoughts and everything first. But just because, you're an owner of a company doesn't mean that you're right all the time.
Mm-mm.
And the best owners that I've ever met are willing to admit when they're wrong or willing to fire themselves, per se, from certain individual things. So I've sat in multiple different seats on our accountability chart, and I tell people constantly, I can't wait to fire myself from this position. Come take it, because
Yeah.
I don't want to do all this.
Yeah.
I want to fire myself because I'm not good at it. And understanding, the vulnerability part, but also that leadership comes from all shapes and sizes. And I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Energy Bus.
Mm-mm.
So it's just about a bunch of CEOs who end up riding this bus to and from work, and they're all very negative mindset. And over time, sitting on this bus, they end up becoming a very positive outlook because of the bus driver.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the inspiration came from the bus driver and her life perspective. And she's going through a hardship herself. Her life is very difficult, but she provides this glorious insight to all these people who completely turn their life around and save their marriage. They save their job, whatever it may be, because of their mindset. She was the influence, and she was the one driving the bus. And in an organization, we can see that happen frequent.
Yeah.
And I know I have a personal story real quick where we have a controller, Susan, who just came in not long ago, and she's gonna hate me for saying this too, by the way, Susan Atkins. I love you, just so you know. But she is early 60s, came in and never worked out a day in her life. She comes in and gets inspired, and she goes and tries CrossFit. I think a year and a half or so ago, and she is a complete badass. I could not be more inspired by Susan than anyone else as far as the fitness realm goes, because her goal was to carry a sweeper upstairs. She just wants to be able to hang out with her grandkids and move around, and now she loves it.
Yeah.
And she's completely changed her life. To me, that is inspiring. That is leadership
Good
right
job,
there.
Susan.
Good job, Susan. I can't wait to share this moment with you later on, by the way. But she inspired me, and she does it every day. I'm inspired by her influence,
Yeah.
and so are a lot of other people around her. So like you said, influence comes from multiple areas, and it doesn't have to be the owner of a company or a CEO or, a C-suite type person.
Yeah.
It comes from the people that are trying to be better for themselves and for everyone else. And I don't know anyone that's influenced me that has not been positive. So back to mindset, positivity.
Yeah.
So I think it all kind of comes together in that realm where how you lead and how you influence starts with your mindset.
Sure. Absolutely. And, when you talk about leadership, like the team, I mean, I kind of just talk about blind spots that, you know, I'm just open to blind spots, knowing, okay, what do I not know? Who do I surround myself to get me into a situation where I understand everything going on? Um, and I think that there is a mindset of being willing to know your blind spots, right? I mean, some people just don't want to know it. Some people just think that what they know is what is fact, and that is just not something that I adhere to. And um, there's all different kinds of mindsets, and some are just more, uh, I guess, I don't know if it's easier to work with or more accepting than others. Look, there's plenty of hard ass people that
Mm-hmm.
have been incredibly successful, but I will tell you that like I just don't believe in leaving a body count around. I mean, that is one of my mindsets is, we're not here. I mean, there are plenty of people that are doing major things, risking their lives, you know, solving major world issues, diseases, things like that. Like, we're just we've got a business to run. Profit is not a dirty word, okay? We can enjoy who we're around every day, but like I'm just not interested in doing it, leaving a body count around us. And what do I mean by body count? I mean like you don't go to work and have a mindset where like I'm gonna be just making it miserable on the people around me. That's just not gonna work in my culture.
Same.
Okay. Uh, because what does that mean? Like you leave people around you that just don't want to be around you. They don't enjoy coming to work. They don't enjoy what you bring. And then what does that mean? Well, they may not want to be a part of the company anymore.
How's
And
their
like,
production if they don't enjoy being there?
right. Well, but I mean, but also like what if they're an A player
Mm-hmm.
that just is around someone who makes their days miserable? They may not want to stay at the company. Who gets hurt in that situation? The coworkers,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the company, me as an owner, and potentially even that person who left that they don't get to grow in the environment they want.
Mm-hmm.
But why is that? It's because they were around someone who just makes their days miserable. And so, you know, that's a mindset
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And so the other kind of example I use is like you're either a lighter or you're an extinguisher. You're either creating problems or you're solving
Mm-hmm.
problems. And which one are you? And, getting to the right answer. I mean, you know, getting to that point of just saying, like, look, I'm always creating fires. I'm always creating problems. I'm always, making other lives miserable during the course of the day. Or I'm an extinguisher. I'm helping to solve problems. I'm helping to put out the fires. I'm
Mm-hmm.
helping to create better days for people. That's all part of the teamwork initiative, that we have within the company. So it's, you know, you people are going to have bad days, but isn't it better to have bad days or where you're around people that want to support you through those bad days versus just making bad days? I mean, again, I've got 135 employees. They don't all interact with each other every single day, but they are relying on each other on the success of the company. And so we don't want to sit here and have people that interact and create fires or body counts or, you know, just things to say, this is guys on my team,
Mm-hmm.
So mindset is really important. And whether it is influence or the other topic of just leadership is really something that's important to me. I mean, I learned that leadership is a studyable topic. You can learn how to become a better leader. You've certainly taken to that and, think about how much you've grown just as a leader, as an individual. I mean, it's incredible what you've able to achieve. And if I was a Kickstarter to that, that's great. But there's things that you're doing that I learned in my 40s or late 30s about being a better leader, being a better uh, influencer, and how do we get to winning, and how do you create a culture. I mean, those are all things that you can learn from other people and what they've done, and maybe even learn what they didn't do and how to do that
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Absolutely. With that, we'll take a quick commercial break and then I want to come back to leadership.
Okay.
This episode is brought to you by Corey G Fitness. Go to CoreyGFitness.com for all your training, nutrition needs. personal development, enhanced lifestyle. CoreyGFitness.com. All right, we're back from commercial break, and we got the owner of Hamilton Parker here, Adam Lewin. Adam was touching on leadership right before the break, and Adam, I want you to continue on with leadership. So, what have you seen in the last almost 20 years now as the owner of the company when you went through the purchase and all the hard times with the recession? What does leadership mean to you, and how have you learned from that?
So, I'll say first and foremost that people have different styles, right? And my dad had a completely different style than me, and what he needed to do as a leader was, at the time when he had the business and when he was growing, like, it was, what he needed to do was just different than maybe what I felt resonated or how I am, right? And I will say this, that I always say that family business is a club, and you're either in the club or you're not in the club. And what I mean by that is you're either in a family business or you're not in a family business. And even if you don't stay in a business, you're still a member of the club because you knew what that was. And I was a different style leader than my dad. And my dad, what worked for him was successful. What I wanted to be, I had to get through that process of understanding, what kind of leader do I want to be? And I really made the decision that I wanted to be a leader that was, a little bit more transparent with the financial success of the company as far as how we're doing. And again, this was not uncommon. I mean, I point to my dad because that was how I evolved. But back in the days, like the 60s, the 70s, even the 80s, like, owners didn't share their numbers.
Right.
Owners did not talk about like what they did. It was private, and that's okay. But how people needed to be involved, I decided I wanted to be more open, with, how are we doing as a company? Are we doing well? Are we not doing well? Sharing to an extent numbers that they can connect with. Creating core values, creating situations where people understand what's expected of them. I came into the business. People, for a long time, they just put their head down and they worked for 30 years, and people really need more interactive feedback on how they're doing so that they stay engaged, in the business. And all of this is part of leadership. And I think that one of the things that is really important is people just have to understand that people have different styles with how they lead. I'm not saying that I want, a screamer and a yeller. I can be that. I have been that. I decided I didn't want to stay as that, so I've mellowed out over the years. But I will say that, like, you can be firm and convincing, but not in a way that's insulting and belligerent 100%. And whatever. And part of it just comes as a leader to just setting expectations with your team and respecting the different styles on the leadership team. One of my favorite books that I mentioned or that I talked about with you is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Love it.
And why do I love that book? Because first of all, one of the things that it says is that the most important team in an organization is the leadership team. If the leadership team is not aligned and not on the same page, then the rest of the organization suffers.
100%.
Okay? So that's what I talk about within my organization, is that it's not that you're not important if you're not on leadership, but if I don't have your leader aligned with me, then you're going to suffer, as an employee, as a team. And so that's so important, is just the development of leadership. And what does that mean? Then it's also developing the next level of leaders. And we have managers, we have supervisors, we spend time with them. We talk about influence. We talk about, that just because, you're not maybe the senior person in the organization, you still have a major influence on what goes on around here. So I was really fortunate to be in a meeting with Les Wexner of, Victoria's Secret, L Brands, Bath and Body Works at the time. And this was after my dad passed away, I remember. And he talked with about 15 of us about leadership as a studyable topic. And he's an incredible reader. I'm not a great reader. I think he made a comment that, not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really remember that. And I read a lot of articles and tidbits. I'm not great at reading books, although I'm going to try and get better in this next stage of my life. But he just talked about leadership as a studyable topic, and that you can learn to be a leader. And I had never heard that before. So this was around 2007, I believe. I'd never heard that before, that you could learn to become a leader, and that really resonated with me.
100%. Personal development for me is a strong, core-rooted, topic of conversation, because I'm not a good reader. So for me to physically sit down and read a book, it is a weakness of mine. But I go through a book a week, depending on the length. So
it's more than me. That's
depending
about
on the
50
length, it's
one more books than me.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. So what I discovered is I'm actually fairly present and available when it's audio. So Corey kind of came up with a concept about 10 years ago of doing personal development after a workout. So get done at the gym, and then he would go walk on a treadmill or do walking lunges, and then he would listen to an audiobook. And it does a couple things. So after a workout,
That's great.
a steady state cardio, your heart rate's not real intense, right? It's not real high. So you're able to concentrate on what you're listening to. And then also, if you're listening to music or something real upbeat, you're more prone to want to get more aggressive and raise that heart rate and burn out quicker and not be able to do the longevity of it. So if you're listening to a book, you have that euphoric feeling after a workout. You're retaining more from what he's always done, and what I've always done myself. When I get done with a workout, I hop in my truck, and personal development is the start from that point until I get to the office. And that means that the audio is playing in my truck on the way home. I hop out of my truck, I turn my phone back on, I'm in the shower, it's on. It's like an obsession now.
Mm-hmm.
Ask my wife, she's not too fond of it, but I am absolutely obsessed with learning, because I gain so much from other people, and they're just like a mentor. What you can learn from other people's journeys via reading, or in my case, audio. And then if I have a monotone, narrator, I've struggled to listen to that. So I turn the speed up. So 1.2 or 1.5, I'll make it faster. And everyone's like, well, how do you even keep up with that? I'm forced to. If I go 5 seconds and I'm lost, then I'll just shut it off.
Yeah.
But as long as I start with intent to pay attention, I actually gain more insight, because I have to pay attention. I'm forced to pay attention. So listening via audio has been a sanctuary for me, because I have that 6 to 8 minute travel from my house to the office. Not very much, but the compound effect over time is massive. So I don't know if you're big on audio, but I don't listen to the radio. The only time that I listen to any type of music is normally on the way to the gym. Just something pretty heavy to get my ass up at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. It's funny, because I have a 7-minute drive to work. Okay, and it's really hard for me to start a podcast, which I mean, there's, or an audio book. It is not easy, because I'm on the phone. I'm usually I get in and I'm dialing a number before I get out of my driveway to someone, because maybe I want to connect with a friend. Maybe I want to just see how someone's doing. Maybe I want to, need to return a phone call. Maybe I need to tell someone, hey, when I get in, which is literally in 5 minutes, I want to meet with you, do this. And that's just my short attention span theater and my anxiousness to just sort of, connect or do things. And so, it's something I need to work on.
So I was always that way as well, and now I find myself not talking on the phone as much and sending a text message with the same message and intent. It's not the personal connection, right?
Yeah.
But if you're heading to the office, you need to meet with someone. Hey, I'll be in 20 minutes.
Right.
Do you have time to meet?
Yeah.
And it sounds so simple and so minute.
I do it.
But I used to be the same way, and what I figured out is I have less time but more impactful conversation. So it's not diluted in my case.
Well, and I'm learning what I can be better at. But even here today, I mean, I had a 25-minute drive to get here. Probably could have listened to a podcast. What did I do? I mean, I had 32 text conversations, voice text conversations going on, just talking about something, reviewing something. And so, and I don't know. I mean, I wish I could be better about just sitting down and listening to a podcast or reading a book. I got to get better at it.
Well,
I gotta get
I'm not
better
good
at
at just sitting down and being present in the moment. I'm doing it with my chaos outside of the
Yeah,
world still
yeah.
going on, because for me to find peace and clarity enough to sit down and actually read a physical book is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
I'm as wired as they come, and
Known.
I don't have
This
much
is
peace in
known.
my life. I don't have much peace in my life whatsoever. So I'm not that, sit on my, front porch swing, read a book as the wind's blowing, drinking a cup of coffee. That is not me. I am
Yeah.
a complete dumpster fire on nitrous going down the highway,
Well,
listening to one in one ear, out of the corner pocket,
yeah,
basically.
but I'm going to tell you what's really nice. You know what's really nice?
Mhm.
Silence.
I've
It's
became more
really,
peaceful.
really nice. Is just, I mean, I have literally done that where I'm just driving and I've got nothing in the car, and it is really nice.
I've started to become that way. I might do that like 5 minutes a week.
Yeah.
It's baby
Yeah.
steps for me.
Yeah.
But I also found some peace in that, where I'm actually trying to go the other way now, where I'm trying to slow down, take a deep breath, and my two main goals for next year: best husband, best dad, present at home. Right? That's my number one goal. My second goal is recovery. Them are
Yeah.
my two main goals for next year. The side effect will be the amount of business production that goes up and the amount of people that
Yeah.
I'm able to help. But I have to take care of myself more, and I know that
Yeah.
it's going to hit a point where I can't live the way that I live now in the chaos that I do, on a day-to-day now.
Yeah.
It's going to have an expiration date at some point, where physically or mentally something's going to give in. Now, physically, I've broken enough and been injured enough to know that I have plenty of setbacks. But now the personal development, has allowed me to open my eyes to other areas where
Yeah.
this recovery thing is very, very important. And I
Yeah.
need to find peace in that. So personal development for me is something that, I created. I'm writing a book, and I have a newsletter called The Pipeline of Prosperity.
Yep, I got that the other
And
day.
what are you putting in your pipeline to be prosperous in
Yeah.
life? What are you putting in your pipeline to achieve success?
Yeah.
And what we consume really dictates where we go. We don't get to control our environment from a young age. And I want to get back to something you were just talking about. So whether this ties together or not, you talked about being a different leader than what your dad was. And I'm the same way. I'm a much different leader than what I was raised up into. And for me personally, I'm a different leader because of willing to be vulnerable. I don't have so much pride that I have to be the man that did it all. It's amazing what you can achieve when no one cares who gets the success. And for me, I don't want all the accolades hanging up on my wall. I want everyone else
Mm-hmm.
to succeed around me. My success will speak for itself, and what I do will speak for itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need all these accolades and trophies. I don't need to puff my chest out and tell anyone how good I am. I don't care about that. What I find the most pride in is who around me is achieving their ultimate level of success, because to me, that is what success is to me. It's not my personal accomplishments, it's the team accomplishments. But I want to go even deeper, because this all started in 1934 for you. The business journey did. And I want to see something, or see if this ties together with you at all. So 1933, the Great Depression hits. 3 generations later, right? We have an abundance of resources at every stopping point in America right now. Whether it's not being forced to work to survive, which has been uncommon up until 15 years ago, per se. Food is at every street corner. And we have a workforce somewhat crisis now, especially in a blue-collar, hardworking atmosphere like ours. So, hardworking blue-collar nation used to be at the forefront of building society, and it still is. Society is built on the back of blue-collar nation, but blue-collar nation was built on cutthroat, pride-driven, individual success, and not team success for the most part, from what I've seen. Now, you've changed. Your mantra is not the same as what the industry per se says. Mine is not the same as what I came up in, which was that cutthroat blue collar. How much of that do you think stems from the generational change, from the Great Depression, from scarcity mindset, first generation, second generation, and the third generation started to flourish with technology, more abundance, more resource? I see a huge correlation between it, where people need to feel appreciated and valued today.
Yeah.
That was never there even maybe 10, 15 years ago. But now, everything is instant access, whether it's food, whether it's technology, the news. I mean, If someone puts out any type of article in the news, it's instant. It's out. So resources are in abundance. Scarcity is not something that we have now outside of workforce. So do you think there's any connection to that whatsoever? Because I kind of put that together myself from a seminar, but I see it in our industry especially.
I mean, this is a broad topic. I mean, it's like you could go over. I mean, you could get into the political side of this. You could get into the charitable side of this. You could get into the mental health side of it. I mean, there's so much, right? And that could be a podcast, in and of itself,
Yes,
right?
good.
So I here's what I'm trying to think about how I want to phrase this. First of all, I think that there's two things that kind of feed where we are overall today in some way, but it's not everything, okay? Because again, there's a lot of conversation. But when I think about kind of what I see going on, first of all, I think about my kids, and I think about just the distractions that are out there, right? And a lot of that comes down to the technology conversation that you mentioned, right? I mean, again, and look, the kids have different anxieties today. They have different stresses today. Is it partially because of technology? Absolutely, no doubt. But it's also part of the second part of the conversation, which is parents. Okay, I mean, I think that parenting makes a big difference in how kids are raised. Okay, I mean, look, I live in Columbus. I live in a city. You're out here in Newark. It's a little bit more of a, rural environment. And, the opportunity for distraction, candidly, for your kids may be less than my kids.
100%.
Okay? And so, like, what does that mean? What does that translate to? I don't know what it translates to. All I know is that parents are going to be the single biggest driver to how these kids adapt and evolve in a way that allows them to have a great and healthy life, right? I mean, and I'm not going to give this clairvoyant, answer, but I do believe that like the distractions are huge for kids, and I don't just mean technology. I mean the stress, the anxiety, the pressure, I'm all about keeping kids busy, but sometimes I think a little downtime, and I learned this from my wife, a little downtime is just good for them.
100%.
Okay? But then the other part is the parents. Like, if parents only give their kids, using a golf term, a perfect lie, if they're always in the fairway, if they're never in the rough, they're not evolving and growing. And, kids, it's okay to fail. It's okay to hit a rough patch. It's really then about how you adapt to do it. And I think that, sometimes when I look at the kids that I see, I look at the parents and I say, how do they raise them? Do they always give them a perfect lie in life? Do they never test them? Do they never ask them to, get their hands dirty or to do dirty work, or were they never challenged? I mean, that's what I think is the biggest driver is, and it doesn't mean that you can't be nurturing. It doesn't mean that you can't be comforting, but you've got to celebrate the tough moments and say, look what you've learned, from this. And I mean, I've had moments when I was growing up where I screwed up.
Adversity is what's probably made
Yeah.
you successful, though, or been
Yeah,
part of it,
of
right?
course. But also, it's like, yes, adversity, but watching how my parents handled the
Mhm.
adversity. I mean, look, my dad was. My daughter asked me, my middle child, my daughter asked me if I ever got grounded as a kid. Who grounded you? And I said, Mimi. She's like, Mimi was the one that grounded you. I thought, and yeah, because that's how she handled it. But my father had a different toughness about him. The silence was maybe sometimes more
The disappointment.
deafening. Yeah, disappointment was worse. So
Yeah.
I think that what I've heard is that always the generation before us talks about how bad of a generation we are, and or how we're destined for failure, and we've been okay, right? I think that parenting just has everything to do with how you guide your kids. And let's also remember what we talked about earlier. like if as parents we can give our kids perspective, but respect that they might have different mentors that give them additional perspective that might be our own blind spots, like that's a win. Because
$100.
I don't expect my kids to be just like me.
I pray to God mine aren't.
You know, and what I really want from my kids, and I've said this to my wife, this is the last thing I'll say, I want my kids to be productive and happy. If 30 years from now, when I'm no longer around, my kids can say I'm productive and I'm happy. Productive meaning I work, or maybe I choose to stay home with my kids, but you know,
feel value in
that's
it,
the
right?
feel because that's the hardest job. Being a mother is the hardest job.
Shout out to all the stay-at-home moms for sure.
But even the working moms, because like they still have the same, just and single mothers. I have an affinity for the single parents that have raised these kids. Like if my kids are happy and productive, I'll be very satisfied as a father.
So I have to touch on that real quick because I find that being productive in society leads to happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've ever found someone that was happy that did not feel like they were a productive person. And to me, maybe I'm missing something, but I just feel like when you're productive, it drives happiness.
Yeah.
You know, if you've always had something handed to you, never had to work or earn anything, I feel like it just leaves such a hole there of fulfillment.
Yeah.
To me, I've seen that where, someone that was just handed everything, a lot of times they're the most miserable people because they have not earned anything. And, I have two girls, 6 and 2, like I said earlier, and I'm juggling that fine line of discipline, adversity. I think failure at a young age is good. I heard the other day, it was a podcast I was listening to, and a parent had actually asked every day when his kids got home from school, what did you fail at today? And it was almost like there was some disappointment when they didn't fail at anything. And the message was amazing because what the driver of it was, if you're not failing at something, you're not trying enough. You're not reaching out enough.
Yeah.
You're not doing this or doing that. And it just shows the power in failure and overcoming failure, I think, is the big message. What you do with your failures and what you learn from it. I have a mantra that I've said for quite some time, and we say in our organization now, it's a win or learn, never lose.
Yeah.
So losing to me is quitting. Failure to me is quitting. And on this map, on this highway to success that we're on, failure is on the same highway as success.
Yeah.
It's just an earlier exit ramp. That's really, when everyone understands that failure is part of success, and you find me someone that's successful that hasn't failed,
Absolutely.
you're never going to. Everyone has a failure in their life that has led to their success.
Yeah.
Failure is on the same road.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you just have to take things as learning opportunities. You have to take things as learning opportunities, and they don't have to define you. Now, I'm not saying and I mean, let's just say, let's just hope that we just never have an incident in our lives that is just so bad that it literally derails our life, personally, professionally, whatever. But as kids, there's a phrase: little people, little problems; big people, big problems. And just there's nothing wrong as you're growing up. You learn so much from your mistakes or from other people's mistakes. And then as parents, we have to talk about them so that they become a conversation point. That's how my wife and I, we choose to just be very open with our kids about the good and the bad. And I give my wife Stephanie a ton of credit because we had a parent-teacher conference years ago, and we were meeting with the teacher, and she said to the teacher about our oldest daughter, it can't all be good, You got it. If it's all good, I know you're not telling me everything.
Right.
And I learned from that comment because I realized hearing things that our kids need to work on is a positive thing.
It is. Criticism in general, transparency in general, even though it's tough. Back to the 5 disciplines, trust in your team, the ability to have conflict within that leadership team.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. And if you don't have that trust to have them hard conversations, there's something missing.
Yeah.
And I look at life problems are a sign of progress. So whenever a problem is, let's use business for a sense. So you come into a problem within your organization. Most of the time that means that your threshold is outdoing what you have in place. So you're expanding past what your current situation is, whether it's a process or personnel, whatever it is. you're growing past your current state
Mm-hmm.
because the problem's arising for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the problems are just a sign of progress.
Yeah.
And it's what you do with that problem that ends up, being the solution in the evolution of your company.
Yeah.
And I always, whenever someone brings me a problem, the one thing I say before I react to any of it is, what is a potential solution? Don't just bring a problem. I'm in the solutions industry.
What do you think? What do you think?
Yes. Give me some feedback on it. A lot of times just identifying the problem makes the problem bigger. So just focus on the problem 10% of the time and go right to the solution. This is an opportunity to grow because of this situation.
Right.
And then don't talk about that. Talk about the opportunity or the solution. And that's where your mindset goes back to the positivity.
Yeah.
Positive mind, solution, opportunity based. Everything changes when that happens because the problem doesn't get bigger.
Yeah. And I always someone will come up and say, well, they have a problem. I'm like, they being, well, so-and-so within the company? Yeah. Okay, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
Like I can't stand when it's we. Like we have to solve this together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not them. We're all on the same team.
Them and they, and terms like that. Whenever it's
I usually ask for clarity.
I do too. Yeah. Bring who is the name or names of issues, and let's sit down and talk about it like adults.
It's not you. It's not someone else. It's us because it's our company.
100%. Yeah. So I want to jump into one more thing and then we'll wrap it up. So let's talk about wellness. You talked about soccer with Treadway quite a bit. Growing up playing soccer, sounds like at a pretty decently high level too. I will say that. Being a fan and still
high school, but that's still okay. But it's varsity, I guess. I could have worn my letter jacket.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a shout out for it anyways. I'll call it a high level. So talk about wellness in general and how that correlates to your day-to-day running a business and how it translates into being a better, productive businessman.
I mean, well, I'm going to just say full disclosure that after watching a couple of your first podcasts, I texted you and I said, hey, I am not a CrossFit guru. I want to make sure you know that. And you were great with your response. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I just try and take good care of myself by just breaking a sweat every day. That's what I want to do. I want to break a sweat every day. And I'm not a person who can wake up, 3 a.m. and do what you do. I incredible respect for what we talked about earlier, but I do have to create a discipline for myself to get up and just get my workout completed. Because I know that I'm better on the days when I work when I work out in the morning. When I do not work out in the morning, I'm just not as sharp. And for me, like, it's really just about, look, I get on a Peloton bike, I do 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I do major stretching or whatever. I talked about Pilates. I do because it's been great for my back and my hamstrings. And I work out with a trainer where she just, pushes me on my weights and things like that because I want to be, I want to just be able to have a great life with my kids and be healthy and active, into my 70s. And everything suggests that, if you don't do it early, you lose muscle mass and then you become weaker and then you're not as fit down the road.
Yeah.
So all of this is about just, I want to be able to be productive, happy as a father with my kids, hopefully my grandkids, for a long time. And so that's why I do it. That's why I do it for the long term, and for the short term is because I know that I'm better on the days when I work out.
Mental clarity.
Mental clarity for sure.
You wake up and you do that first thing. It's the hardest thing you're probably going to do throughout the day.
Right.
At least, in my situation, that's the case. And, whenever I talk about wellness on the podcast, iron develops us. It develops our infrastructure, right? But it's not, me advocating for everyone to be in the 4 a.m. crew because I understand that it's a very few people that are even going to be capable of doing what we do.
And I'm a morning person, and
that's
I'm
fine.
Still not going to do it.
And that's okay though because it's about your individual infrastructure and what you do to utilize that.
Right.
And like Jim Havens, he was on a few weeks ago. And he was a big-time runner for a long time because his dad passed away at 44, and Jim was only 4 years old. And he had a very, very heartwarming story about his journey. And he got to a certain age and realized that running is not for me.
Yeah.
So he started riding bikes.
Yeah.
And the message behind his story is absolutely incredible. But even to this day, he still tracks how many miles he rides and everything that he does. but it's what wellness, does. I'm not advocating for everyone to do what I do. I'm advocating for everyone to be aware that there is a way that you can enhance your lifestyle,
Yeah.
and it doesn't take much time, and not only mentally and physically, but as far as longevity goes, a lot of people in the blue collar workforce, especially field side, lower back injuries,
Yep.
hamstring weakness is probably the key driver. Lower hamstrings, lower back, all of them injuries compound over time from operating equipment, sitting down, driving dump trucks, something that doesn't have modern suspension or good suspension, working in ditches every day, being on concrete floor all day in a factory. Them have such a long-term compound effect that if you don't fix it and recognize it early, there's a point in time where
Oh
you can't
yeah.
come back from it, and it can be devastating to somebody.
Right.
And I'm sure you've seen this, but I have seen health choices with food. Diabetes has been a big thing in our company, and there's probably been about 10 people that I've known in the last 5 years that passed away from poor health choices.
Yeah.
So at the end of it, wellness is just about a better way to create just a ton of value in your life for minimal return
Yeah.
or minimal, input. So
Yeah.
drinking water instead of Mountain Dew,
Right.
massive. Packing a lunch every day. Even if you're not packing high quality food, you're not going out to eat. Financial upside and health upside is going to be there because you're packing something from home.
Yeah.
It's very, very simple concepts, but man, I see it every day. And financial alone, going out to eat every day, going out to Starbucks every day, I mean, $20, $30, $40 a day.
Yeah.
The compound effect financially of that adding up is massive. And what you can do financially to save money and pack your lunch, it's huge. But today, with our abundant society, it's just so easy to go to Starbucks and get a $5 cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And if the awareness was just there for some people, their lifestyle could be so much better.
Right.
And that's, at the end of the day, that's what I really want to get across is just, I'm not pushing anyone through that door. I just want to open it and let them hear what's on the other
Yeah.
side of it.
I mean, I think that it's all about, we have choices, and then you have to decide what you want to do. I think that when it comes to the exercise and the working out, I mean, I just treat it like a meeting, and my meeting for myself, right, is at that 6 a.m. 6:30 time frame, and that's what I want to do, and because I know that's what I need to help myself, right? It doesn't mean that I still I can eat Taco Bell with the best of them. I'm just going to say it.
Well, me too.
But,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean I do it, but I'll do it. But I'll also do it with, I make sure I'm exercising all the time. It's just when you don't do one thing and you only do the bad things,
That's
that it hurts you. But the other part, and I mean, look, I didn't do a good job of it this year. I need to get better. I want to kind of set a new goal for next year. But, I enjoy just meditation and practicing meditation. I want to get better at that. If I can just do 20 minutes a day, it's going to help me significantly. And I got away from it this year. And so there's all different facets of, how you help yourself mentally, physically, spiritually. I mean, there's just a lot of different things you can do.
What are you putting in your pipeline to be successful, right?
Right.
The pipeline of prosperity.
Yeah.
That's what the newsletter and the program coming out at some point is all about. And for me, like I said earlier, recovery being the second thing for me next year, part of that is meditation. I have a sauna at my house and I have an ice bath set up at my house. So ice and sauna.
Cold plunge.
Once a week, that'll be on my Wednesday recovery day next year. I kind of did intermittently this year, but I'm going to stick to a once a week protocol. And then meditation for me is going to be a lot of stretching, relaxation piece, but breathing.
Yep.
So breath work is something that a good friend of ours, Brian Peters, is very big on, and he's helped me with the fire and ice combination on the sauna and the ice tub. But the breath work before that is really the key driver to the calmness and the peace that you find. So meditation, to me, I look at meditation like the ability to breathe right, to breathe better, and the amount of science behind how you breathe and why you breathe a certain way is massive for longevity. Massive.
Yep.
I'm kind of a crazy one myself. I actually tape my mouth shut every night, so I only breathe through my nose. if I told you the whole thing, you'd be like, "Holy shit, who's this Inspector
So
Gadget?"
we're going the wrong direction on this podcast.
But I do. I take my mouth shut, so I only breathe through my nose. And you might call me crazy, and you might laugh about it, but I encourage you to look it up because breathing through your nose only will create the most sound sleep, and that's coming from someone as wired as I am.
Do you snore?
No. Well, not now, especially, but
Did you snore before?
sometimes. But I have a deviated septum, so I don't breathe through my nose naturally. I'm a mouth breather. So if I take my mouth shut, I will breathe through my nose.
Should you tape your mouth shut if you have a deviated septum?
I thought I was going to suffocate
Seems like a
at
bad
first,
combination.
but it actually is the most peaceful I've ever been. Now, there's a few times where I've had to rip it off because I couldn't breathe well enough, but overall, it has changed my life as far as
I'm going to talk to Sam about this when I get back to the office.
well, Sam's going to be like, yeah, he's been telling me to do that for 2 years. Absolutely. Sam knows all about it. Adam.
Good stuff. Thanks for sharing that, too.
I appreciate you coming on. Absolutely. It was an honor to have you today. Cannot thank you enough for everything you did for me.
My pleasure. So, thank you for the trust.
Look forward to it, and I hope to have you on again.
Good stuff.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Max Effort Muscle. For all your supplement needs, go to maxeffortmuscle.com.